number of Kuwaiti lawmakers have presented a draft bill proposing a quota system for employing foreigners as one way to redress the demographic imbalance in the country. According to the proposed quota system, the number of Indian workers should not exceed 15% of the overall Kuwaiti population, while those of Egyptian expatriates should stand at a maximum 10%. The authors of the draft said that the demographic imbalance in Kuwait has spawned problems in recent years, becoming more conspicuous and serious since the outbreak of the novel coronavirus. The state of Kuwait will enforce a 12-hour partial curfew from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. starting Sunday as part of a 5-phase plan to gradually return to normal life. This step is part of a slew of measures to ease coronavirus-related restrictions. As per the new measures, mosques will reopen from Sunday in accordance with health guidelines and preventive measures. Suspension of Umrah trips remains in effect. The Saudi Ministry of Hajj and Umrah has confirmed as the kingdom is heading towards easing restrictions previously imposed to curb the spread of the new coronavirus. Millions of Muslims normally flock to holy sites in Saudi Arabia to perform the Umrah in the months that precede and follow the annual Hajj pilgrimage, which is due to begin in late July this year. Earlier this week, Saudi Arabia announced a phased plan easing virus-related restrictions to allow gradual return to normal life. The General Directorate of Passports said in a statement that tourist visas that expired due to the suspension of international flights in the wake of the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic will be extended automatically free of charge for 3 months. The move, implemented in collaboration with the National Information Center, comes as part of the kingdom's continuous efforts to mitigate the economic fallout of precautionary measures taken to prevent the spread of coronavirus and to ensure the health and safety of citizens and residents alike. Saudi Arabia is currently conducting a study to examine the effect of sunlight, heat, and the weather on coronavirus. There has been a lot of debate on the effect of high temperatures and hot weather on the coronavirus in the scientific community. Researchers in France found that the coronavirus could survive exposure to high temperatures for prolonged periods, but that COVID-19 was deactivated when heated at a temperature of 92 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. A fourth tanker loaded with gasoline sent from Iran entered Venezuelan waters as the first 3 prepared to discharge at the country's ports. Iran is providing up to 1.53 million barrels of gasoline and refining components to help Venezuela ease an acute shortage, the result of the near-complete lockdown in its refining network and new sanctions on its oil industry. Washington has criticized the arrangement as both OPEC nations are sanctioned. Lebanese lawmakers approved a law to remove banking secrecy rules in order to better fight rampant corruption that has pushed the country to the edge of economic collapse. The move opens the way for investigations into bank accounts of current and former officials such as cabinet ministers, legislators, and civil servants. The restoration of stolen public money has been a key demand for protesters who have been demonstrating since October against Lebanon's ruling elite, which they blame for widespread corruption. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Palestinians living in the Jordan Valley will remain in what he described as an enclave after Israel annexes the territory and will not be granted Israeli citizenship. The annexation of the Jordan Valley and the far-flung settlements would make it virtually impossible to create a viable Palestinian state alongside Israel, which is still widely seen as the only way to resolve the decades-old conflict. Under a coalition agreement reached last month, Netanyahu can bring his annexation plans before the government as early as July the 1st. The European Union prolonged for another year its sanctions against the head of the Syrian president regime and other top political officials, military officers, and business people over the continued crackdown on civilians in the conflict-torn country. The European Council headquarters of the 27 EU countries said in a statement that the sanctions would be extended until June 1, 2021, more than a decade after the conflict began, as the repression of the civilian population continues. The sanctions list now includes 273 people, including members of Assad's family, close associates, and top military brass, and 70 entities like organizations and companies. The Saudi government is expected to launch support initiatives to protect the kingdom's aviation sector, following a complete halt of activities over the past 2 months due to the outbreak of COVID-19. Experts in the Saudi domestic aviation stressed that the sector would recover significantly compared with many other sectors. The experts based their projections on the expected government initiatives, which seek to maintain the growth of the aviation sector in line with Vision 2030 that aims to benefit from the country's strategic location. Lebanon's Prime Minister Hassan Diab said that the presence of the international peacekeepers operating in the south, UNIFIL, is still necessary and urgent, reiterating Lebanon's commitment to implementing Security Council Resolution 1701 and maintaining the number of international forces without any amendment. He also stressed the importance of UNIFIL's continued coordination and close cooperation with the Lebanese army to prevent any confusion. Algeria said it would immediately recall its ambassador from France for consultations after the documentaries about the Iraq protest movement were aired on French public television. The Interior Ministry said the films, while seemingly spontaneous and under the pretext of freedom of expression, are in fact attacks on the Algerian people and its institutions, including the army. Citing the recurrent character of such programs on French public TV, it signaled out 2 documentaries broadcast on Tuesday by France 5 and the parliamentary channel. Former Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu, who heads the opposition Future Party, has claimed that President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's Justice and Development, or AKP, is on the verge of collapse. He was once among Erdogan's closest allies, has criticized a new presidential system that came into effect in 2018, abolished the office of the Prime Minister, and vastly increased Erdogan's powers. He announced his resignation from the AKP in September, saying the party, which has dominated Turkish politics for 17 years, was no longer able to solve the country's problems and was stifling internal debate. Hundreds of Tunisians protested in at least 7 cities to demand jobs, heaping pressure on a government facing the worst economic crisis in more than 60 years due to the coronavirus pandemic. In the southern city of Gafsa, hundreds of university graduates gathered in front of the state headquarters, chanting slogans such as "We need jobs." Tunisia started relaxing restrictions on movement and business this month, allowing 75% of government employees to return to work, while the authorities expect the economy to shrink by 4.3% this year, which would be its steepest contraction in more than 60 years. Sudan's former president Omar al-Bashir is in hospital with suspected coronavirus symptoms. The report also says that 7 other members of al-Bashir's regime who have been detained in prison alongside al-Bashir since the regime fell in 2019 are in hospitals in Khartoum as well. 3 of them have chronic conditions, 3 are confirmed COVID-19 cases, and al-Bashir and 1 other have suspected symptoms.